Hey guys, Dan here with Battlefield Curator. I'm at the A Walk in Their Boots event in Tennessee, and as you can see, there are a lot of military vehicles. There's a lot of reenactors. There's a lot of historians, so let's go check it out. So there were quite a few battle reenactments, but the main battle reenactment was the World War II Battle Reenactment, and it was featuring a Tiger tank. So let's roll that footage. When you walk around, you'll see there's plenty of rows of historical displays. I got a chance to talk to some of the living historians at pretty much everyone, but here are some of the bigger takeaways that I got from talking to folks.
This is the camp for the Vendel age period, 550 to 750 roughly. It was the pre-Vikings, their ancestors before the Vikings. Okay. A ship burial was discovered next to a school and a road they were working on. Inside were 7 different male bodies. They soon began to realize these are Swedes, ancestors of the Swedes, so they called them Sweden. They started doing excavations and found a second ship, much bigger than the first ship, full of 33 high-class, wealthy warriors. All these guys died in battle. These men were carefully arranged in the second ship in 3 rows and one guy on the top 4th row. These guys, 32 or 33 warriors, had over 40 swords with them. And that's rare because usually it was believed only very upper-class, wealthy Vikings had a sword. The guy buried on top was a big, tough, burly guy that was just about impossible to kill. He had his arm sliced into 3 pieces while he was alive and fighting. Oh my gosh. He had his foot badly wounded, almost cut off. Many puncture wounds, and they finally had to finish him off by cutting his head off, beheading him. But he was carefully reassembled and put on the top of the pile like he was the most valorous of the band. The other 3 rows under him were carefully lined up side by side. The weapons accompanied them. The one right under him was a smaller guy and had a handicap with his neck. His vertebrae were fused, so it was very hard for him to turn his head left or right. Not the kind of person you take on a raid. But he had a sword like this, which was already an antique style, like 100 years before his time, so possibly that was an heirloom handed down to him because he was nobility. But the real kicker was that next to his mouth, and before decomposition, it may have been in his mouth, was a king piece from one of these games. known as the king, and the game is called Hneftafel, King's Table. The object is the perimeter attackers made of amber are attacking these ivory pieces to take the king. So it's a warrior's game that they did in their spare time. Many ships have been found. They really are all over southern Sweden and Norway and Denmark. Many have never yet been excavated. The ones that have been excavated, only a fraction of those have been published. So much still has to be exposed.
English Civil War.
I always ask people, well, who won? Parliament or the king? Right now, he's Charles I. So obviously there has to be a Charles II. Today there's a Charles III. So they always say, oh, well, the king won. Actually, the king lost. He was actually then tried by Parliament as a citizen, and they called him by his name, Charles Stuart. He was found guilty of waging war against his own people, and he was beheaded for it. So for about 10 years, England was actually a republic, or so the English love to call it that. Oliver Cromwell ruled as a dictator for about 10 years, but he died. They didn't know what to do, so they imparted Charles' son, become King Charles II, and he came back, and that's why you now have a monarchy on the throne of England. Most matchlocks are smoothbore, they're not rifled. Ours are just matchlock muskets. And around 1450, they developed the first shoulder-armed one that had a match, and they were small and stuff. So now they'll evolve, and roughly around 1550, they start making the much bigger ones that we have. The earlier ones are generally called a caliver or an arquebus, and they were small, very small bore. But when they started putting out these much bigger with a great bore, that's when they actually started calling them a musket. It's called a matchlock musket.
Oh.
The musket comes out this size, comes out about 1550. But to load one of these, you have your primer. Helps if you open your pan cover. You want to close it real fast. Actually, just before I put this in, you would have normally put a ball in. So we've loaded. We're going to fire a volley.
This is a variation called a blunderbuss. That is Dutch. The word roughly means thunderstick. As I would like to say, this is my boomstick. The reason this end is like this, it's a funnel. I'm on a ship, I'm on a horse and carriage, I'm on a horse, I'm on a camel, mule, whatever. What do they all have in common? They're moving. If you have an itty bitty hole like the pistol, or you have a funnel like this, which is easier to load? This is the fastest reloading weapon, small arm, at the time. Basically, it's a great big shotgun. Good about maybe 50 yards, but whatever's in between you and there is obliterated. Wow. 3-pounder cannons, that is standard from our time period, 1660 to 1720. Bring it rhyme.
I am actually depicting a pioneer, that being the combat troops. You can tell by the fact that my cap is black and that there's black piping on both my sleeve and collar. This is bright red for standard infantry. If I was with the Jaggers, that being the skirmishers and snipers, this along with my piping would be green. If I was with the colonial troops, it would be blue. The cockades here on the front, the top one represents the German Empire as a whole, the black, white, and red. However, the one on the bottom represents what state the soldier was from. You'll see here this is actually a very early war version with the gold buttons and the Brandenburg cuffs. I have a later war version over here that has more simplified cuffs and silver buttons. Eventually they had a planchette that would cover the buttons entirely. This, unfortunately I could not find an original, but this is a very close interwar version. This was a prototype specifically worn by German stormtroopers in 1915. It was never adopted entirely by the German army. Because of its weight, you'll feel it.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
It's kind of heavy.
It is very heavy. After 1916, they changed out the Pickelhelms for the 1916 steel helmet. This is the gummy mask. 1915, the Germans introduced chlorine gas, which was the first deadly gas of the war. And these were the masks issued to the troops for that reason, along with its associated bag. In 1917, they changed from cloth to leather, and changed the bags to canisters. Originally, during gas attacks, they would use klaxons, but that was also used for several other things, such as air raids. As a result, they needed something that would make a unique sound, and therefore
Mainly the kit that a soldier would have had, U.S. soldier would have had
Yes.
during
So-
the invasion of Omaha
Yeah,
Beach.
so this is, they were still wearing the M41 jacket at that time.
Okay.
And then the first waves of the assault were issued a brand new assault jacket, which was modeled on the British jerkin jacket. And then assault troops carried an assault gas mask, because there was a real concern that if the Germans decided, you know, this is the real deal, that they would use gas and anything else they needed to resist it. And then they also had issued the troops life belts, which were Navy life preservers. And
That's an original one?
yep, that's an original. It's, you know,
a little-
it wasn't designed to last 80 years, so it's been
Wow.
kind of hard.
That's pretty cool.
We're medical. We would be in the ANC, which stands for Army Nurse Corps. She's got a Air Corps patch, which wasn't necessarily the Air Force yet. It was Air Corps. She would be more along the lines of like a flight nurse, which was ones that did like the hospital stuff, but actually on aircraft, which is actually a lot more of a dangerous job just because the aircraft were pretty heavily targeted and stuff like that. There could also be mechanical malfunctions. Yeah, so this poor lady over here is probably, it wasn't super duper common, but it did happen. They'd also wear sometimes flight suits. This is more of just like a everyday thing. We got a gas mask pack as well, but we kind of use it as a little bit of a purse right now.
In the National Scout, yeah, it was what we call the military contract. In the early 60s, from 60 to 64, they had quite a bit of different needs changing in the military as they were changing over. We had Cuban mercenary pilots that were trained through the Bay of Pigs, and they ended up not having a job. So the CIA put them to work flying air cover for 5 Commando in the Congo during the Congo crisis. And this is a copy of one that would have been brought in with them. It's militarized. As you can tell, it's got a couple of things a normal Scout might not have. It's got these tow rungs here. It's got a heavy-duty military suspension. If you have your military stuff, you got to be able to tow it, right? So instead of a regular tow package, it's got the military pintle hook and modified bumperettes done by International. It also has reinforced floor in it, so they could put gun pedestals and mounts. Yeah, they also modified CJ6s. They went into Rhodesia and South Africa and bought up all the Willis Jeeps that they could from the Willis Jeep dealer that was there. So what they did was they upgunned some of the military stuff. This one has got a ventilating windshield in it, which is militarized, as well as a few other things that they did to upgun it. They were very precise when they did their vehicle markings in the Congo. That's a copy of the actual Jeep as it was used in 1965, 66 in the Congo. So as you can see, we tried to be faithful. The CIA provided the 5 Commando M151 Jeeps in 1965-66, and a lot of them were converted into gun Jeeps. What the mercenaries liked about the Jeeps was that they were very light and they could get in and out of anywhere. They could build a bridge across anything. You got to remember, at this point, the Congo infrastructure had been pretty much fading away. It had no central government for almost 5 years. So all of the jungle roads and stuff, a lot of it washed away. They had to get whatever vehicles they could. This is an exact replica of a Jeep that was given to the mercenaries from 5-7 Commando. All of them were 5 Commando, but the second number denoted the platoon. They basically had heavy weapons platoons. So 5-7 was a mobile heavy weapons platoon, and they heavily modified this M15 now. As you can see, they did away with the windshield. It's not there anymore. It has a cowl-mounted 30 caliber. And we have an American 30 cal on this, but they had American 30 cals. They had what's called FN 30s, which is the last version of this, were given to them by Belgium. And if you'll note, it has a yellow air marker on the hood. Those CIA Cuban pilots we trained for the Bay of Pigs that never went, they were flying A-26s. A-26 is a B-26, but it has 8 50 caliber machine guns in the nose of it, and they had rocket pods. And so they didn't want to get strafed by their own troops. And these guys were used as shock troops. So 5 Commando would punch a hole under communist Simbas. That was the revolt, punch a hole in them when they took over a town. They'd go in shock troops, blazing with the gun Jeeps. And the The Cuban exiles provided close air support, and so that's why they had this on here, so they didn't shoot their own troops. That's the actual Jeep as it existed in 1965-66. Wow.
I was there in 68, 69. Well, I loved my M16. Our minimum load was 21 mag, and I carried more than that. It's easy to go through magazine or full auto. I burned 10 magazines one night in ambush in the blink of an eye. Almost nobody had them jam if they took care of it. You did. You had to clean it. There's a lot of guys, they wouldn't clean their weapon. Crazy. But if you cleaned it, it was a good weapon. Still is. It's even a better weapon now. Starlight scope. Frankly, I thought it was worthless. They brought us one, and it's heavy. You're in this big plastic case with all these batteries. They like to experiment on what they were going to do, I think. They also brought us these things that you stake out into the ground and listen to people to see if they come walking up on you. They didn't work either.
Perimeter areas.
Yeah, we would go out and they'd say, take this out on ambush, and they give you this huge box of junk that you got to carry. You're carrying all this weight anyway.
It was replaced by GSR, ground surveillance radar, the TPS-5 output.
It didn't work because every time an artillery round went off, which they were all the time, all this headset stuff you got on there like.
All right, and just to recap, I mean, there's so much history here. I just couldn't put it all in one video, and I didn't have time throughout the 2 days that I went to talk to everybody for over an hour. So there was only a few people I talked to for a really long time, and just got so much history out of there. So if you're looking for this event, again, make sure to look up a Walk in Their Boots Living History event. You can probably find them on their website and go on their Facebook page. Have you been to one of these events before? Let me know in the comments section. Have you been to something similar to this? Let me know what other events you guys are thinking about going to. Pulverize the like button. Subscribe if you haven't. As I always like to say, be sure to learn history and curate history. Make it a great day.